in clause 22. Thank you.
I call the Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr Chairman, the Minister has informed the House that he's all over the detail of this bill. Those were his words, and I want to challenge him on that because there is nothing that he has said in his contribution that would suggest that. I was the Minister who introduced this bill. I was not the Minister that oversaw its reference to a select committee. It was referred to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee as opposed to the Commerce Select Committee, and that's because of its trade implications. And I want to acknowledge in this House the work of John Hayes as the chair of that committee because he did an excellent job. And, well, there's a lot of people on this side of the House who think he should be the Minister in charge of this bill now. And perhaps he will have the opportunity to do that sometime soon. But that's by the by. That's not the point. The reality is that the Minister's challenged this side of the House to take the politics out of the debate, and I'm happy to do that because he was very happy to sit there and listen to every single one of the National Party get up and insult me personally for taking a, I believe, position of integrity on a particular matter that I felt that I had to take responsibility for. And that perhaps is the difference between me and the Minister and the Chair, is that I was prepared to take responsibility for the mistake that I made, and I did make a mistake.
Order.
I should have been a bit more open about the role that I'd played, in particular information being referred to the media. And the reason that I wasn't was, well, it was for a whole lot of reasons. But I just want to say this, that I believe that it's most important that our borders are protected in a whole lot of ways. And that is very relevant to this bill because It is about our borders being protected from having goods dumped on its shores to undermine local manufacturers. That's what this bill's about. And nobody's actually really talking on the government side about what the bill's about. That's what it's about. And I stood down from my position as Minister because I was trying to protect our borders from having people arrive here making claims about refugee status that were not true and to try and get around our rules in order to claim their right to remain in New Zealand. I made a mistake. I took responsibility and I stood down, and I think other people should be prepared to do that in this House as well.
Order.
And I actually don't think that it does anyone any good to attack me personally on this matter and then get up here, stand up in this House and take umbrage at members on this side of the House.
I'm sorry, Honourable Member. Can I just say to members on my right that interjections are out of order unless they're rare and reasonable, and also that a running commentary is out of order as well. Now, people can take an opportunity to stand and have their say. I call the Honourable Leanne Dalzell. Point of order, the Honourable Tohanare.
Mr Speaker, that speech has been going on for some 3 or 4 minutes, and it has talked about the indiscretions that member made when she was a minister. It has nothing to do with the bill. So if we want us to talk, to be listening and being courteous, that's fine, but talk about the bill and we will.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Speaker, and you may be at some disadvantage, but so may the clerk on your left be at some disadvantage unless you were in fact listening to the debate previously. The matters to which my colleague is responding are the very matters that were brought up and spoken at length, probably for a minute and a half or two, by the Honourable Tohanare when he was making his speech. He referred to these matters, and it is an absolute right of a member in this House to defend their integrity and to contrast it with others when they are so challenged.
Thank you. Can I just refer members to Speakers Ruling 46 Part 2, which does allow some leeway for a member to respond, but then they have to come back to the detail of Part 1.
Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr Chairman, this legislation is designed to protect New Zealand's borders. and it is designed to protect our borders, to ensure that our local manufacturers are not put at risk at having cheap goods dumped on our economy to the detriment of local manufacturing. That's what the legislation does. Now, the Minister told us that he was all over this bill. And that the reason that I believe that he is not all over the bill is that he actually hasn't described the fact of what it does. He actually seems to think that this is a brand new piece of legislation that has somehow emerged from nowhere, and it has created a new set of obligations under the World Trade Organisation rules that didn't previously exist. Well, we currently do have rules that provide for temporary safeguards to be put in place. The problem is that there is not an adequate definition of the public interest for those rules to be applied in an adequate way. And the other problem is an administrative one, which I thought that the Minister would be all over, if he was all over this piece of legislation, which he's not. He's obviously forgotten something, because what this legislation does is it replaces the temporary safeguard authorities that already exist. And we already have temporary safeguard authorities, but to set up temporary safeguard authorities is administratively inconvenient. It costs time, it costs money, it wastes time, it wastes money. And I would have thought that the Minister for Regulatory Reform would have been all over this, and he might have actually mentioned that in his contribution to the debate. But I actually don't think that he's all over this, either that or he's been briefed and he's forgotten what he's been briefed about. And I think that that's probably, you know, it probably reflects the reality of the situation that he's in at the moment. The bottom line is that this particular piece of legislation, Mr. Chairman,
I call the Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr. Chairman, which I was very pleased to introduce as Minister of Commerce. And I actually recall when the previous Minister of Commerce made his contribution to the first reading on this, which was back on the 11th of March 2009. Actually, we're not far off that now, so that's now 3 years ago since the first reading, and it was introduced prior to the 2008 election. So Simon Power was the Minister of Commerce that actually read the first reading of this bill. It was prepared for me, and I actually read along with the speech, and I'll just quote a little bit from Hansard because I thought it was quite funny. He said, "The current regime is subject to the Temporary Safeguard Authorities Act 1987, which has not been subject to a comprehensive review since its inception. As a consequence," and I interrupted him, and it's recorded in Hansard as saying, "It's now outdated," and he says, "The Act is now outdated." That is quite right, I say to Ms Dalzell, and does not provide an adequate means for New Zealand to comply with its WTO obligations should it be necessary to take safeguard action. And so the point was that, Simon Power actually was reading a speech that had been prepared for me as Minister of Commerce to read back in 2008. He was reading it on the 11th of March in 2009. And do you know why he wasn't reading it until the 11th of March 2009? It was because it didn't fit within the concept of that then government's 100 days of action, where they had to do all those amazing things within the first 100 days, and they had to introduce all these different things. That was the plan. That was the plan, to have 100 days of action, and actually I think they stopped after the 100 days. But the reality is that this has sat on the order paper for a very long time, and I think that the Minister in the chair does a great disservice to the reality of the need in this particular area to stand there and to actually try and take umbrage at some of the issues that this side of the House has raised, when he is more than happy to see, the attacks made on me personally. I don't really care about what people say about me. I'm probably not going to be here for very much longer. The bottom line is that midpoint in my parliamentary career, I haven't got that long to go. So what I wanted to say is that if the minister really did understand the reality of what he was doing in this, and if he really was all over it, then he would know a little bit more about why this legislation was so important, and he would actually answer some of the questions that were put on this side of the House. And the reality is that I don't think that he actually really cares about it, and the reason that he doesn't care about it is that he is not long for this place, and in fact I shall be here longer than he will be here, and he will be leaving this place relatively soon. And so I think that it's important for this member. I don't think he will be, but the reality is that I think that the member does this important measure a great disservice, and I am actually quite annoyed that he has allowed the debate to be used in this particular way and actually not defended the important elements by understanding the reality about what it is designed to protect, because it is more about ensuring that our local domestic manufacturers have a fair go in their own country, and it is actually about some of those ownership issues that matter a lot to New Zealanders and actually matter a lot to the workforce who work for the manufacturers in New Zealand and who cannot compete with some of the overseas interests who are more than happy to dump on our country. They're more than happy to buy up every element of our country that they can get their hands on, and at the end of the day, this actually stands as quite a sad and sorry commentary on a government that thinks that this is so unimportant that it's been able to sit on the order paper for so long and then end up here in the House as part of a debate that doesn't really matter to this minister at all. And I think that is a very, very sad commentary on the state of affairs that we are confronted with. And I think that the minister should get back on his feet, and rather than complaining about some of the obvious comments that are going to be made about his inability to respond and take responsibility for some of his own actions, like others have done in this House, it's a sad and sorry indictment on him.
I call the honourable member Michael Woodhouse.
I move that the question be now put.
No, I'm going to recognise the honourable member Stephen